ManaCube is one of the largest networks in Minecraft history, surpassing even some of the veterans of the game now like Mineplex and 2B2T. But it hasn't always been this way. In fact, even though ManaCube launched the same year as Hypixel, Mineplex, and HiveMC, it remained the underdog, a relatively small server until it exploded over the last few years. So how did ManaCube evolve from an underground PvP and minigame server to one of the largest networks in the game? In today's episode of Minecraft Uncovered, let's take a look at the history of ManaCube and the recent rise of an empire. ManaCube might have only become a household name in recent years, but this Goliath of Minecraft multiplayer got its start earlier than you might think. September 13th, 2013, just a few short months after the release of historic kingpins of the game, like Hypixel and Mineplex. But where these two began with their own original minigames made by well-established creators in the Minecraft community, ManaCube, formerly known as Minevast, had even more humble beginnings. It began as a simple creative server in the earlier days of the game, and despite a lack of support or reputation in the beginnings, it quickly started to develop into something honestly very impressive, especially for the time. Throughout just the next month and a half, Survival joined the Minevast lineup, Parkour made its first appearances on the server, and even Quakecraft was added with some pretty decent success. Minevast 2.0, though, was released on November 3rd, officially branding the server into a proper network. With a new kit PvP mode and a better creative server, the community grew and expanded even outside of the network itself, with a better forum and a new TeamSpeak. Just a week after the server's revamp, they even released their own interpretations of the famous Hunger Games and Factions game modes, which quickly became a hit. Factions was the bigger success of these two, and despite a 4-year disappearance many years later, it's currently one of the largest game modes on the network. The story of Minevast's Hunger Games, though, was a bit more strained, as were most of the minigame-esque modes that made an appearance throughout this history. It was gone by January, and even though it was supposed to be added back in February with Townie, another game mode which apparently existed and was removed at some point, I guess, nothing ended up happening when the date finally came. On August 13th of 2014, nearly a year and a lot of growth later, Hunger Games was rebranded to Survival Games and re-released on the server, but it would again disappear at some unknown point in the future, never to be seen again. Even the owners of the server don't know much about when or why, which is a common theme you'll be seeing for the earliest history in this video. The forum where all this was announced was completely reset in the middle of 2014, so a lot of news and announcements from the start of the server is just gone now, and we won't be able to get it back. Later in December, Skyblock and SkyGrid would join the network as well, and while competing Skyblock servers mostly won over the player base early on, Minevast's mode would slowly grow over the years into what today is the largest game on the network. By the end of the year, Minevast held 5 unique game modes, all but one of which are still around today 8.5 years later. Along with a sizable network itself, they had built a community that was nothing to scoff at, with 20,000 unique players, a peak player count of 120, and 1,000 registered users on their forum by the start of 2014. Numbers that were admittedly minuscule compared to the giants in the server world, but still propelled them to the top of enough server lists and showcases to make them one of the most enticing Minecraft communities of 2013. As the clock ticked on though, players were eager to see what the next year would bring for their favorite network. 2014 had arrived, and Minevast was ready to take it on. With such a strong start in 2013, you might be surprised, but 2014's opening, or rather lack of one, wasn't very impressive, at least according to the website. I'm not sure why, maybe because the site would soon be revamped, but announcements for all the major things just sorta stopped, and the only things we saw were smaller updates, events, and fixes. So I was under the impression that for the entire first half of the year, nothing happened. That was until I found the old abandoned Minevast Twitter account, and even though they couldn't fit too much info in the 140 character tweet limit, this helps fill in the gaps very, very well. Despite what I said earlier, 2014 actually did start strong. In fact, on the first day of the year, Kit PvP 2.0 was slated to release, with a brand new custom map and tons of new plugins to revolutionize the player experience. Except it didn't happen. It ended up being released on April 6th instead, after some news in March when the new website was released and Skyblock was added to the network. Even though it was already there, I'm just as confused as you are. But along with Kit PvP 2.0, we also got a brand new game mode, Skywars Beta. Considering the fast-paced, mini-game feel of Skywars, it was pretty out of place in a network full of game modes that pulled you in for the long haul, but it surprisingly became a favorite and, unlike Hunger Games, stayed around for half of the server's lifespan before it was removed. And yet, even with a new site, new game modes, and like 5 different revamps in just 3 months, the team was nowhere near done. May 2nd brought Factions 2.0, and the 13th brought Kit PvP 3.0, both of which I know very little about other than they had a lot of bug fixes and new maps. But June is where things really went crazy, with the most packed month in the network's history so far, for better and for worse. Unfortunately, it kicked off with the worst. The first communication we got from the Minevast staff team urged us to sign a petition saving Minecraft multiplayer by protesting the Minecraft EULA, a set of rules we're certainly no stranger to on this channel. This was 2014, long before the EULA began to be heavily enforced, but I guess that Dakin, that's the owner by the way, was somewhat of a prophet here, more on that later. On top of this petition, some of the first major downtime of Minevast was here as well, crashing twice throughout the month. But it wasn't all bad, and Creative 3.0 was launched right in the middle of it all, with the end of the month bringing some much needed hype to drown out the June gloom. Prison was coming. Okay, that actually sounds even more depressing out of context, but in context, this was one of the most popping game modes around at the time, and this would be one of the most detailed, realized versions of the game that the world had ever seen. On June 30th, it finally released, and the next 2 weeks were dedicated to making it as perfect as possible, with a few issues, of course. July was just as important, bringing global messages, hub minigames, Skywars 2.0, and an announcement for the long-awaited re-release of Hunger Games that we mentioned earlier. In August, it finally came alive, along with the party system. The server updated to 1.8 in September, we got Kit PvP 4 in October, duels in November, and Factions 3.0 in December. But just as the year was coming to a close, the player count suddenly began to rise higher, and higher, and higher, and higher. By Christmas Eve, the server peaked with over 400 players on at once. That's more than 3 times the previous record of 120. So after a full year of slow and steady growth, what made the server suddenly soar to the top? Well, there's something I forgot to tell you. Who am I kidding? I ain't forgetting nothing. But I did save the best for last. Minevast Parkour. Yeah, it was parkour that would become the unlikely king of the network, launching on September 14th, just after its 1-year anniversary, and eventually becoming so massive that they had to make a second parkour server just to hold all the players flocking to Minevast to try it out. And with the mode being largely community run, there was no shortage of new maps and minigames for the entertainment of the hundreds, if not thousands of new players appearing every day. Entering 2015, Minevast wasn't just thriving, it was at the top of its game thanks to a huge success at the end of the year, and a tripled player base was eager to see what was next. But how would Minevast live up to the success of their star hit? Was this just another one-hit wonder, or were they here to stay? From 2015 and onwards, Minevast knew that they had struck gold, and thus their focus changed. They no longer needed to experiment with what worked and what didn't. They'd already been there, done that, and come out on top. So now they needed to make sure the top is where they stayed, and the next few years of their history reflects that. Through the entirety of 2015, not a single new mode was introduced like in the years prior. In fact, 2 game modes were removed, with Factions and Prison disappearing for the next few years. But at the time, they were extra, they were expendable, they weren't needed. But the classics of Minevast, as well as the recent success of Parkour, were the formula for greatness. So despite a slower year with no major updates except Kit PvP 5 and creative Skywars and Skyblock 3.0, the server thrived more than ever. The newly polished website and store welcomed the exploding player base that was now in the hundreds of thousands, and with Parkour receiving a second wave of popularity in June that was even bigger than the first, there was no sign of the craze slowing down anytime soon. Minevast turned 2 years old on September 12th, and 8 days later, parkour had its 1-year anniversary, bringing a new spawn and, of course, even more players to the server. And yet, even with the massive success of the year, it opened and ended with some of the worst news in its history. In early April, the server began to suffer from DDoSing, or a distributed denial of service. If you want to learn more about it, I have an entire video on the topic, but it's essentially where someone uses tens, hundreds, thousands, even more computers and other devices to spam a network with as much data as they can until it can't handle it and crashes. Minevast did end up on top, as does nearly every server that faces an attack like this, but it took days for them to resolve the problem. And though the unwanted attention was a sign that the server was growing faster than ever before, it ironically could have put an end to the growth if they hadn't been so on top of things. Fortunately, the crisis was mostly averted, and we know it didn't quite put the server on the ground. That was the early drama, but the second came at the very end of the year, December 2nd, the last piece of news we got before the turn of the year. That was when the ManaCube forums were hacked by someone who managed to discover Dakin's password, yes, the actual owner of the server himself, hacked into their admin panel, sound familiar? And deleted the forum before replacing it with his own forum theme. Staff had to roll back the forum by 3 full days, which was pretty bad, but it could have been much worse. If the hacker could one-hit KO the entire forum with nothing but a password, just imagine what could have happened to the files behind the network if they fell into his grubby, baked jalapeno-flavored Cheeto dust-encrusted paws. Once again, the crisis was averted, but it could have been terrible. And that was 2015. But you might be surprised to hear that even with the incredible drama and growth of the year, it wasn't the biggest annum of Minevast, because 2016 was just around the corner. And this year alone changed Minevast's life as we know it, setting the pace for the second half of the decade. The year started off great. Kit PvP 6.0 released in January, the TeamSpeak and Friends system got updates on February 11th, and just 3 days later, the network hit 500,000 total players, which were pretty incredible numbers for the time. But February of 2016 brought something else that wasn't quite so desirable, and its effects branched far beyond ManaCube. If you've seen my other server videos, you probably know what I'm about to talk about. I've talked about it in every single one. The Minecraft End User License Agreement, the EULA. For those that don't know, the EULA is basically the Minecraft Terms of Service. It's a set of rules that you agree not to break if you're going to play the game, run a server, make community content, and so on. And while everyone has probably skimmed through it at some point in their lifetime, you might not know just how much of a headache it's been for so many communities throughout the years. Not even just servers. I've talked about Minecraft account trades many times on this channel, and that's very clearly against the EULA, but it continues because the world has collectively decided to ignore the rules that they find a bit overbearing. It's similar with Minecraft servers. While some servers have caved to Mojang's demands, there are hundreds, thousands, even more that simply refuse to abide by the rules. And back in the early days, this was an even bigger problem than it is now. And that leads us to February 28th of 2016. The day that EULA compliance was pushed on the Minevast. The server had never been extremely pay to win like so many servers have been in the past, but the EULA was strict, and pretty much any server with any sort of store or reward system had to make some adjustments, Minevast included. Their fix was simple. Anyone who donated before the EULA deadline of March 31st got to keep their pre-EULA perks until the end of time, but players that donated after the deadline would have to settle for the new donation perks that weren't quite as overpowered. So now everything was fine, right? Minevast thought so, a lot of other servers thought so, most of the players thought so. Mojang did not. On April 30th, Mojang released the first Minecraft server blacklist, encompassing 31 total servers. Minevast was one of them. Minevast made the needed changes, and after some more drama with Mojang blacklisting yet another one of their IPs, on May 13th, after 2 weeks of a Minecraft-wide ban, the Minevast server escaped the clutches of Mojang and was released back to the public. But despite the pretty terrible start to the year, the rest of the year would be one of the most incredible periods in Minecraft history. On July 2nd of 2016, the Barebones game mode released, after months in the making, being the first new game mode on the network since Parkour's nearly 2 years ago. Barebones was essentially a hardcore take on Kit PvP. Instead of the extravagant items of kits and the meta of stockpiling vaults on vaults of god gear, Barebones gave you one kit with very basic upgrades you could get only from beating other players in combat. Even the map was completely different, built specifically for the best PvP experience instead of an aesthetically pleasing backdrop for your fights. But the grueling spin-off of Kit PvP was a hit, and even though the mode was shut down a year later to make more room for development on the main branch of PvP, it's still one of the most beloved lost modes on the server to this day. But you might be surprised to hear that even after a 2-year dry period, Barebones was not the only new mode on Minevast. Less than a month later, the brand new Islands game mode released, this one being a sort of spin-off of Skyblock that took place on an island in the middle of a deadly ocean and acid rainstorms that forced you to protect yourself from the water at all costs. This one was once again a big success, and though the community has shrunk in the year since its launch, Islands is still around today. That same month brought Kit PvP 7, which was even more material to feed the growing PvP community on ManaCube after the Barebones launch. And it was just in time for the 3rd anniversary of the server on September 14th of 2016. But after such a big day, everything slowed down. The rest of September came and went without an update. October was just as quiet. November had nothing in store, and halfway through December, it was still radio silence from the staff team. But it wasn't that nothing was going on behind the scenes. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Something massive had been brewing for the past few months, and on December 18th of 2016, it was finally revealed, the ManaCube Adventure Update. Minevast was no more. They had completely rebranded with a different name, new staff, and even a full lore and backstory to the new ManaCube world. Along with that, they would be completely revamping the website, the entire survival server, and the entire Skyblock server, along with adding a new hub. And just 2 days later, even more news was revealed, with 2 new additions to the staff team, Grazer10 and King Tong joining ManaCube as media owners. For those that don't know, a media owner is a sort of role on a lot of Minecraft servers, where a YouTuber or other content creator joins the staff team and gets to profit from the server and make decisions about how it's ran in exchange for constantly promoting the server through their videos. With Grazer10 and King Tong being good friends and pretty big names in the Minecraft YouTube scene throughout the years, they were bound to make ManaCube even bigger than before, right? Well, sort of. There was a boost in players right when they joined, but it wore off pretty quickly, and it seems that ManaCube just wasn't right for their style of content. So they ended up jumping ship just a few months later, and haven't been seen on ManaCube for years since. But it didn't matter. 2016 was already a success for ManaCube, a huge year for them with a complete server revamp and 2 brand new game modes beloved by the player base. As they headed into 2017 though, both ManaCube and Minecraft's popularity were starting to die down. With the EULA changes from the year prior severely restricting their budget, and a player count that was slowly dropping, would they survive? It seemed like the beginning of the end, and as the server entered into the late 2010s, it also seemed like the dark age of ManaCube was upon us. 2017 on paper wasn't so bad. We got Skywars 4.0 in February, a bunch of parkour updates in March, Skyblock 5.0 in June, Kit PvP 8 in July, a new hub in August, and both Kit PvP 9 and Skyblock 6.0 in December. On top of that, players voted on the 4th ManaCube anniversary to bring Prison back after years. In November had arguably one of the most important updates in the server's history with the Parkour 2.0 reset, bringing a near complete restart to the game, a brand new spawn, and the first of the new champion maps, Goliath-sized adventure maps full of puzzles, thousands of parkour jumps, and incredible builds to accompany them. So 2017 overall, not that bad. And yet, still, the community was growing quiet and players were leaving. The several-year-long hype that parkour brought was dying down, and even the server revamp couldn't hold them to the heights they had reached in years prior. On top of that, Minecraft itself had started to fall off around the middle of 2016, and as time went on, it only got less and less popular. Entering 2018, players were still dropping from both ManaCube and Minecraft as a whole, and as we inched closer to 2019, Minecraft was at its lowest point since early 2011, near the start of Minecraft Beta. Along with that, not a lot was happening on ManaCube's end. Throughout the entirety of 2018, there was very little for players to grasp onto, and most had no reason to hold on to the server. Yeah, Skyblock 7.0 released in October, and there was even the long-awaited release of the new prison server Olympus in April. But other than that, I mean, the hub got rock, paper, scissors, the anniversary had a new hub and some cool Easter eggs, but that was it. That was ManaCube's 2018. In 2019, things were still slow, but they were getting better, and this was actually when I first joined, so I can speak from first-hand experience here. January brought droppers to parkour, and whether this is the reason why or not, when I joined parkour for the first time as my introduction to the network, it was actually doing very well, even if some other modes like Creative and Islands were struggling. On the other hand though, Skyblock and Olympus were thriving, and they both got big enough to split into 2 servers each, with Skyblock getting Oasis and Aztec realms, and Olympus getting both an Aether and Atlas prison map. On top of that, just a few weeks after all this, Factions came back after 4 years, and it was and is a really big success. Finally, entering the 6th anniversary of ManaCube, the server was being resurrected along with Minecraft itself. But before the year would end, ManaCube would get another boost heading into 2020. A big boost, and at least for parkour, the biggest boost it has and ever will see. If you play ManaCube, parkour or not, you know what I'm talking about. And even if you don't, when I explain, you'll see exactly why. See, on October 18th of 2019, a very familiar face and name made an appearance on ManaCube in a YouTube video. One you might have seen. The title was Unsolved Mystery of Minecraft's Longest Jump, and the YouTuber was Dream. Now, back in October 2019, even though a lot smaller than today, Dream was still a very big YouTuber with millions of views on each video. But this video, it stood out. It caught the attention of viewers worldwide, which caught the attention of the YouTube algorithm, and today it stands at over 14 million views. Small numbers by today's standards, but it's his 3rd biggest video up until that point, beaten only by his first ever video and another one on Cursed Minecraft. Now, October also had something else very important, at least to me. On October 30th, my ManaCube staff application was accepted, and I became a helper on the server. So I got to see the effects of Dreaminization on a Minecraft server firsthand as we headed into 2020. Oh, and let's not forget, not only did Dream completely explode the network, COVID-19 had just come around, meaning that everybody was at home. So what do you get when 14 million Minecraft players, mostly children, are home from school and work with nothing to do? You get utter, complete, unadulterated chaos. I know I say chaos a lot in my videos, but I truly mean it was chaos. It was mayhem, it was destruction, it was near anarchy. Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of new players were funneled all into a single game mode on a smaller Minecraft network at the time, immediately launching us from not even in the top 10 to the 4th largest Minecraft server at the peak of it all. And for the first month, the insanity wasn't even localized to parkour. Dream stans and antis alike terrorized every single mode on the server until eventually they lost interest. But parkour wouldn't be quite so lucky. Arguments about the best Minecraft YouTuber plagued the chat, along with equally vocal players telling them to shut up, hackers ran rampant, and frankly terrible Dream skin builds were probably a solid 30% of all the parkour maps submitted for the rest of the year and the entirety of 2020. I'm not exaggerating, we actually counted this. The name Dream was said in chat over 300,000 times in 2020 alone, not even counting the last few months of 2019 when he first uploaded the video. But on the bright side, the insane and sudden popularity of ManaCube gave the developers a breather, where they didn't have to worry about pushing out new game modes and updates every few weeks, and they finally got to relax and take their time on the extremely hyped Kit PvP 10, even if myself and the rest of the parkour staff were slowly developing arthritis from how often we had to type /mute. By November of 2020, the Dream invasion was finally coming to a close, and those who enjoyed parkour were sticking around, leaving the parkour server with a massive community and huge demand for even more content, which ManaCube delivered in the form of the Parkour Adventure update, bringing 2 new adventure maps. Again, remember these things are like 10 times the size of a normal map and are basically the magnum opus of the server, along with a new spawn and daily challenges for the players. As 2020 came to a close, ManaCube finally was able to breathe and plan for the future. Dream's effect had mostly worn off, and players were starting to come out of quarantine. Life was returning to normal. So, with that in mind, what was in store for ManaCube going into 2021? Would it all go to waste as soon as the hype was gone? Or would the empire of ManaCube stay around in the years to come? All in all, 2021 started off very smoothly. The server wasn't dying, but it wasn't flooded either. The team wasn't running out of new games and ideas, but they weren't rushing to push any out. Instead, everyone relaxed and focused on perfecting the projects in progress, including Olympus Season 4 and Kit PvP 11. But above all of these, one of the biggest updates was the release of Skyblock Season 10, which would completely revolutionize the gameplay of Oasis, Aztec, and even Islands, an entirely separate game mode. Islands got its new season at the end of June, while the new Skyblock season came in the middle of July. But Skyblock Season 10 wasn't actually the biggest news of July. In fact, it wasn't even close. That was because on July 7th, it was announced that ManaCube would be merging with another server known as Mineville. See, both of these servers were ran by the same people, the team over at Mana Labs, but Mineville had an issue. On Bedrock Edition, there was already a server named Mineville, and a very big one at that. So players would often mix the servers up, which resulted in a lot of confusion and even hate from the Bedrock community on an otherwise innocent Minecraft server. On top of that, a lot of the game modes were similar, so why split the team across two servers when it's easier and more efficient to just combine them? There was no reason why. So throughout the months of July and August, Mineville migrated into ManaCube, bringing tons of new staff and even new game modes. When Skyblock Season 10 was finally released, it combined the Aztec and Oasis realms of ManaCube with the Water and Fire realms of Mineville into one huge Skyblock conglomerate. About 2 weeks later, Survival Season 7 came around, now with all the gameplay additions of Mineville. And on top of that, over the next month, ManaCube got 3 brand new game modes. Asgard, which was a prison server themed around Norse mythology, Earth, a townie server and almost a return of the original townie game mode nearly a decade late, and Infinity, which was a near anarchy server and quite a unique find on a mainstream network like ManaCube. And of course, merging two servers together had another benefit, being a much larger community than before, shooting the popularity of the network up again for a period of time. As the year slowly went on, then transitioned into 2022, things began to slow down once again. And with the world fully out of quarantine, there wasn't as many people stuck at home playing Minecraft all day either. But that doesn't matter. ManaCube is thriving. We're doing well. Heck, it's midnight as I write this and there's 700 players on. Numbers we only could have dreamed of a few years ago. Numbers higher than all but maybe 3 or 4 networks online today. So as of now, that is where we stand. A network near the top, with more game modes and a larger community than we've ever had. And it's only growing more and more, slowly becoming one of the largest networks in Minecraft history. I can only hope that you'll help take it there. Thank you all for watching, hope you very much enjoyed. This video is long overdue. I mean, seriously, it has been 9 months since I first made the outline and did the research for this, and it's just taken me that long to finally get around to making the actual video to go with it. Huge shout out to ManaCube. I imagine anyone that's watched a 28-minute history on it already knows about it, but if you don't, then A, thank you for your support, you're a real one, and B, I definitely recommend it. It's a great server with a ton of games for pretty much everyone. The IP is manacube.com, manacube.net, whatever you want to use, and yeah, enjoy. Anyways, that's just about it. Sorry the video was so long, but I hope you still enjoyed it, and yeah, have a good one, guys. Peace, peace.